Republican candidate Roy Moore was being accused of having sexually preyed on underage girls in his hometown. But amid the scandal, an unknown man left a voicemail message on the phone of at least one Alabaman.
Hi, this is Lenny Bernstein. I'm a reporter for the Washington Post. Calling to find out if anyone at this address is a female between the ages of 54 to 57 years old willing to make damaging remarks about candidate Roy Moore for a reward of between $5,000 to $7,000.
He was suggesting that there was a conspiracy against Moore. There wasn't. There was no reporter doing this for the Washington Post. It was a total fabrication, but it was meant to be plausible to people who were already suspicious of mainstream media. In other words, it was a lie. And the anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist who made the call knew it was a lie. But the question I want to answer is whether he believed it was true. This is going to be my first essay in a series bringing together everything I've learned in the last 20 years of dealing with paranoid extremism in my family, and the last year of trying to de-radicalize my dad. Because there's still a lot that news media and common knowledge just don't understand about conspiracy theories and extremism. And if you're going to do something about it in your life or in your community, then you need to understand it. And to do that, there's something you need to know up front. Conspiracy theorists don't believe their theories, at least not in the way you're using the word. After you watch this video, the next time you hear some completely unhinged, bigoted, authoritarian insanity, you're going to stop yourself for a second. You're going to remind yourself that these people don't really believe what they're saying, and you're going to understand what they are doing instead.
The human brain is wired to see patterns.
And because we evolved to notice patterns,
It may be due to extra dopamine in their brains.
These cognitive processes we all experience present a huge challenge to those attempting to stem the tide of misinformation and conspiracy theory.
If you're like me, you've heard a lot of things like this. If you're even more like me, and you've lived through the last 6 years of American life, this probably doesn't do the job of explaining conspiracy belief to you anymore. They aren't wrong. Their points about pattern recognition and dopamine levels are all based on good science. It's just that there's a lot they're not explaining, especially because they leave as their last token explanation.
It's an emotional wound that overpowers the higher faculties of the mind.
Everything before that was the tools we use to convince ourselves of these beliefs. They're not the reasons why we believe them. Actually, this old XKCD comic is much closer to understanding the reasons. And reason itself is where we need to start on this very long, complicated journey. There's a book, The Enigma of Reason by Hugo Mercier and Dan Sperber, that I love because it explains everything about people that's ever confused me all at once. In the middle of trying to figure out why anyone would believe these crazy conspiracy theories, it helped me internalize the fact that human reason is not a logical problem-solving mechanism, and it was never meant to be. Following the book, let's first take a look at this. It's a famous optical illusion you may have seen before that exposes a flaw in our visual processing, because this square on the checkerboard and this square are the exact same shade of gray. Next, take this simple logic problem. If Mary has an essay to write, then she will study late at the library. If the library stays open, then Mary will study late at the library. We know only that Mary has an essay to write, so will she study late at the library? If you're like most people who are part of Ruth Burns' 1989 experiment, you would answer no. Mary will not study late at the library. Or maybe that we don't know enough to say. But the answer is actually yes. She will study late at the library, because logically, it's the exact same as this problem, that many more people could get right, yet most people get it wrong when you just write it with these sentences. We like to treat these things as evidence that there's something wrong with our brains, and that the people who can figure it out on the first pass are somehow impressive. Except that we're not all clueless idiots, obviously. The only problem here is that these awkward games are judging our ability to do things that our brains were never meant to do. Your visual processing is not designed to be good at figuring out abstract optical illusions, but it is meant to be good at accounting for light and shadow when trying to figure out what something looks like. And your capacity for reason, was never meant to focus on what is logically relevant within the parameters of a word problem, but it is meant to account for everything someone tells you and its real-world context when trying to figure out the point that they're making. Getting these things wrong doesn't mean that we're stupid. It means that our brains are doing the jobs that they're made for, and the job of human reason, in any human, including you, is not to be logically correct. Through a bunch of fascinating research, Mercier and Sperber deconstruct the way we imagine human reason works. We like to think that what we do is first experience or observe something about the world, then think about it really hard, considering all the premises and implications, then finally come to a conclusion based on our own best logic. But no one has ever done that, and no one ever will, because instead we experience or observe something about the world, then come to a snap judgment based on our intuitions, emotions, and past experiences, and finally come up with a post hoc justification for the intuitive belief that we already came to. But those justifications aren't meant to be logical. They're meant to justify ourselves to the people in our lives. As long as our reasoning convinces the people we care about that we are right and good and worthy of being accepted into the group because of, or in spite of, what we do and believe, human reasoning has done its job. And its job is to fulfill our emotional need for acceptance of what we believe, what we want, and who we are. This is where the XKCD comic is especially apt, because it's not a bug, it's a feature. Human reason is an essential social mechanism that helps groups of us work together by forming consensus and building trust. And the entire world is defined by how good it is at that. Everyone who's ever built a bridge or designed a rocket ship or led a social movement believed everything they believed through this process. It's actually because of this mechanism that we can believe a lot of things that are true, especially things that are beyond our personal experience. If you have to justify your beliefs to a large group of people with a variety of experiences and intuitions and identities, sound logic is one of your best options for convincing the largest number of them to accept you. And things like the scientific method do work, but they don't work because they're tools that solitary geniuses use to create knowledge. They work because they're social norms that enforce standards on our justifications before we can be accepted. The only way the people who built the bridges and the rocket ships managed to do so was because they convinced other people to trust them, to accept them and their ideas. And the only reason that you know anything about the world outside your personal experience is because you trusted someone who told you about it. That is the first edge of the sword, an amazingly powerful system that can get hundreds or thousands or millions of us to work together on things that seem impossible. But there is a second edge. If all of that came together for you, then you might start to see where conspiracy belief forms in the negative space. What if the group to which you justify yourself, the group that you trust, is small and homogeneous? What if you exclude establishments that enforce standards on justification? What if your intuition and the thing you need to form a belief about is just too abstract, complex, emotional, and contradictory because it's yourself? Let's say someone asks you if you think it's going to rain. You'll have your knee-jerk intuitive belief. Then you will think about how to explain your answer. It's getting cloudy and windy. It smells like rain, or the forecast said that it probably would. You just need to convince them that you're a reasonable person given the facts everyone can see for themselves. And they will accept your reasoning, not because it's logical, really, but because it fits with their own intuition and experiences. Now let's say they ask you if you think that your relationship with your partner will last. The process is the same. You'll come to your answer, and then try to justify it. But there's much more at stake here than consensus about the weather. With this extremely personal question comes a flood of thoughts and feelings and memories and needs that are complex and conflicting. Discrete, empirical facts are not going to cut it. The only way to justify your answer to yourself or anyone else is with deeper, greater truths. Rain clouds approaching from the horizon are a physical fact that everyone can experience in common. but it may be true that you and your partner share a mutual generosity that builds trust. Truth and fact. We get that these are two different things we can believe in because we English speakers, at least, have two different nouns. We might even call the most profound and overarching truths greater truths about love, art, God, morality, that help us make sense of the world and our lives. What we don't have are two different verbs. Maybe we don't have those verbs because the process for believing both is the same, and for all of us, the two will mingle. A fact of which we can't be certain will challenge us in a way that makes us feel insecure, and we'll have the option of asking greater truth to take it all away from us, to override facts and give us justifications for what we want to believe in the face of an uncertain reality. This is the beginning of totalitarian certainty. Whether the phone call in Alabama was real or fake didn't matter to the anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist who made it. If he was called out on it, he would probably say it was satire or a joke, or rationalize it in any other way he wanted. Because what did matter to him was a greater truth to his mind, regardless of the facts, that the Jews secretly in power are trying to destroy white Christian male identity. That is the intuitive, emotional belief that he wanted to justify to and be accepted by Alabama voters. The call was a fake, a lie. But to its maker, it was just as true with a capital T as the international Jewish conspiracy he imagined he was fighting against, and it would do its part in justifying his totalitarian certainty. I want to use this phrase for a specific reason, that being the shape of the power dynamic it creates. Pulling from another great book, authoritarianism and totalitarianism are all about a vertical hierarchy of power, with one man on top making sure everyone below him is doing their part to keep him there. And the beliefs of conspiracy theorists work the exact same way. At the University of Kent in 2012, social psychologist and core member of my crew, Karen Douglas, found that the more participants believed that Princess Diana faked her own death, the more they believed that she was murdered. The more they believed that Osama bin Laden was already dead when US Special Forces raided his compound in Pakistan, the more they believed that he's still alive. Someone on the Cult Headquarters subreddit posted a perfect example of this. Whoever made these graphics believes that dinosaur bones are actually dragon bones, and they believe that dinosaur bones aren't real because they're manufactured in China. But here's a more pressing example. Throughout and since 2020, conspiracy theorists have said that COVID is at the same time a non-existent hoax, a bug no more dangerous than the flu, and a deadly Chinese bioweapon. It didn't matter to them that these things can't be true at the same time. But these people aren't crazy. They're building up their hierarchy of justifications for an ultimate belief. At the bottom of the hierarchy are the specific beliefs. None of them can be true at the same time. Yet, if you were to survey conspiracy theorists about which of them they believe, just like Douglas's researchers found, I'm sure that a lot of them, if not most of them, would believe all of them. They believe all of them because they each justify the next belief up on the hierarchy. Every specific belief is an individual justification for the belief above them that helps the believer be accepted by the people to whom they want to justify themselves. If the greater truth of your totalitarian certainty is that scientists are trying to undermine religion with evolutionary theory, then dinosaur bones actually being dragon bones confirms that belief, and dinosaur bones being modern fabrications confirms that belief. If the greater truth of your totalitarian certainty is that Democrats stole the election from Trump, then millions of fraudulent votes for Biden confirms that belief, and the vote totals being flipped between Trump and Biden confirms that belief. And if the greater truth of your totalitarian certainty is that elites are lying about COVID to control our lives, then COVID being a hoax confirms that belief, COVID being a common flu confirms that belief, and COVID being a bioweapon confirms that belief. Thus, all of them are true. All of them. At the same time, in the same way. Not factually true, but emotionally, intuitively, metaphysically true in a way that gives believers a constant source of justifications that will always be accepted by their group. So much so that a lie, Even one that they know is a lie, told to spread that truth, is more true to them than any fact can be alone. Even a lie that contradicts other lies, told for the same truth, they can always be reconciled by baptism within that greater truth, a certainty so powerful that it dispels all doubt and asserts itself as a dictator over our terrifyingly uncertain knowledge of the factual world. In other words, it's a big lie. Where a regular lie says what is false as fact to manipulate those who act on facts, a big lie strides out of the metaphysical, crushing facts underfoot to manipulate those who fear a deep emotional insecurity that they want to escape. This is why you will never, ever be able to debate a conspiracy theorist out of their belief. Even if you debunk every detail, all they'll do is move the goalposts back further up the hill they plan to die on. We can keep going from there with even more big lies and their justifications. That the FBI planted classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, and that Trump declassified the documents before he took them. Neither can be true at the same time, but they are both true to the conspiracy theorist because they both justify the higher order belief that Trump is a victim of deep state persecution. There are a million of these kinds of beliefs, and truly endless specific conspiratorial delusions to support them. All of them are arranged in this hierarchy that eventually leads to the very top. The big lie at the heart of all extremism. We are innocent. They are evil. This is what all conspiracy theorists, paranoid extremists, most truly believe. And they believe it because they have to. Every conspiracy theorist is driven by a deep insecurity that the big lie of their totalitarian certainty comforts for them. Like being asked if they believe their relationship with their partner will last, something about themselves and their circumstances floods them with conflicting thoughts, feelings, and needs. The need to feel that they're special, they're safe, they're smart, they're good, that they know what's going to happen, that they're entitled to their privilege and wealth, that they deserve to have power over the people they think are their enemies. Shared insecurities like these are what form the homogeneous groups of people to whom they justify their beliefs, and beyond whom everyone is an enemy. To lose their totalitarian certainty, to acknowledge their contradictions and reckon with their complicity in lies, is to face their insecurity. And they can't do that. At least not yet. If you've wondered why all of this is so strange and hard and nothing can fix it and everything keeps getting worse, this is why. It's why conspiracism is such a powerful political tool, and why all of those paranoid extremists have organized themselves to take over local election boards and get out their vote. Going back to the XKCD comic one more time, this is why so many people have lost friends and family who are smart and sensible and kind to paranoid extremism. Because conspiracy belief doesn't happen when someone fails at logic. We're all failing at logic just as badly as any conspiracy theorist every day. What it's a failure of is naive cynicism and emotional immaturity, and often dealing with trauma in the face of the human condition. But it's also why it's not hopeless. And it points us to things we can do and have done to save society from fascism. We all have these same kinds of insecurities, and we all believe in things in this same socially motivated way. But not all of us are wallowing in a fever swamp of hateful paranoia. If you aren't, it's because your idea of who counts as us, the people to whom you feel you must justify yourself, is bigger and broader. And it's because you aren't letting your anxieties compel you to seek a delusion and a community of the deluded that will help you escape reality. It isn't because you're special, but it is a path for someone else to get out. If you choose to, and you can do so safely, you might be able to help someone in your life. Might. But you have to know that most of them will not come back to reality. At least not while the real world is a giant mess of anxious uncertainty and disinformation algorithms. Still, there is something you can do to help yourself, your family, and the world, as long as you remember to tell yourself. Conspiracy theorists don't believe their theories. They believe their fears.